So recently received this watch, and as you probably saw there right at the beginning, all it seems to do is just flash the Apple logo. Now, all the gentleman has said to me is my watch isn't coming on and the screen has slightly lifted. Can you fix it? So that's all I've got to go on. So the first thing I do when I get watching like this, after giving it a little bit of a clean, is just to test it, test the power, do a master reset, see if that has any effect. So that's always my first step. With this particular watch, so I've tried that, you can see the charger, I've put it on charge for 5 minutes and it's still doing the same thing. Now, I know if a screen has lifted and the watch is flashing Apple logo or any logo or just a flashing screen, it's usually an inflated battery. That can be caused usually in one of two ways. I won't go into it all now, but basically you've charged it too much or you've charged it too little. Over a week usually you haven't charged it at all and the battery's just dead. So my first job is just to take the screen off. It was already slightly protruded, and once it's off I can see straight away. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a slight bulge in the battery, so I know straight away that this is a battery issue, or at least there isn't a battery issue in here. So my next step is to disconnect that battery. Even though there's not much power going into it, it's important that you disconnect it before you play around with any electronics. In this case, obviously I need to replace the battery anyway, so I've got to disconnect it. So that's the first stage. I apologise that my head's in the way, but I need to get really close to this when I'm doing it. So I use a light on magnified goggles, and finally got the screw out. Now I can lift the casing on top of the screw, which I do with non-metallic object. So once I've got the case out with tweezers, then I use a plastic tool, prying tool, just to pull the battery out. I mean, of course the battery's dead, not a big issue, but you know, I still don't like using metal on top of anything electronic. Now this one, I don't know why, it was a bit of a struggle getting this one out. The adhesive must have melted and then restuck to the watch when it was going through power on, power off. So it stuck down a little bit more than it should, or it usually is. I don't use any alcohol here. I just very slowly and gradually pull it off. That's it. It's just a sticky substance that you will see shortly once I hold the battery up to the camera. So I don't know if you can see this right, but I should come into shot soon. The battery, I'm going to compare this battery to a new battery, and hopefully you should be able to see the difference between an inflated battery and a normal battery. There's the inflated one. You can see that's ballooned and that's normal. So obvious next step is to put a normal battery in it. By normal I mean new, one that's not been inflated, and to pin that down and see if you get anything out of the watch. So once I've got the new battery in place and I've clipped it in, obvious next thing is to test the watch. So I put it on the charger and hopefully I won't get a flashing logo. I usually get this. It's not the green snake of death as I have called it and many have called it. It just means that the battery needs charging. It's only the snake of death if you put this on and the watch starts to heat up or it doesn't move away from this screen. In this particular case, it just means that the battery is drained and it needs a good charge. So the next stage is to leave it for 15 to 20 minutes. I've left the watch and it eventually got to this screen, which is good. There's the note from the customer. As you can see, all he's written is iPhone watch with please fix iPhone watch from Gordon Thomas for repair. That's it. I don't know the code, so obviously you get off that screen. But there you go. So switch this off because I know it's working. There is not a problem with that. It's just me being silly because I've not actually forced it down. Therefore, it's not using the top of the force gasket. But so I've given it a bit of a charge, just a few minutes, and yeah, I'm at this stage. So the battery's obviously working now, which is good. We've fixed that issue, and the next stage is to pin the watch down, and we do that by using T700. The gasket has been cleaned with alcohol, and you can actually do this if you're careful while the watch is still on charge, or you can take it off and you slowly add this adhesive around the force gasket very gradually. Don't worry too much about it leaking out. You can always clean that afterwards. It's a good idea to have a little bit more than you think you'll need, but do not put any adhesive onto the battery section if you can help it. Once that's done, force it closed a little bit. In this case the watch is still on, it doesn't really matter, but it's better to have it off ideally. So I'm going to switch it off, and hopefully it should allow me to now swipe it, which it does. And just go around the edges and just give it a bit of a clean. What I like to do is just use a lint-free cloth, or a cloth that you wipe your spectacles with, and give that clean. Make sure any glue is taken off. So this now has been glued and clamped for 48 hours, and I'm going to take it off, and don't clamp it too tight, but tight enough for the watch to seal. Now that's done, let's give it a bit of a clean. I use a little bit of alcohol on this, not too much. I don't want to melt that adhesive if any of it seeps in, but this is just to clean any parts of this is Isopro, by the way, and this is a lint-free cloth, just to clean any adhesive that may have stuck to the end, and give it a bit of a polish as well. It's always good to give the watch back to the customer when it's clean and it looks good, better than when it came in. So once that's cleaned, the next job is obviously to test it, and test it just by putting it on a charger and just leaving it there for a couple of minutes and see what happens. And hopefully you should get a sign. Sorry, this is slightly out of shot, but you should get a sign that the watch is charging, and there you go. So now I've given it a good charge and done a master reset. This is all the customer said to me. The watch needs repairing, which is fine. It's fine. They don't know what was wrong with it, so they don't know if it's a big issue or a small issue. Now it's just a waiting game. Let that do its thing, and as you can see, it's nice and clean. It looks good. Once it's done, hopefully you should get the start screen of what the customer would see, and how probably the customer has last seen the watch working. After waiting a bit of time, I got to this screen, and that's it. It's all good. I'm going to switch the watch back off and send it back to hopefully a happy customer. Thanks for watching.